Hello teachers! Today I am going to be showing you how to use a self-grading Google form. For the purpose of this video, I am going to be using one of my free resources, Math Drill Standard Multiplication, as an example. A lot of teachers have requested that I add a digital component to this resource, and I just finally got the time to do it. So apart from the TPT ESOL, I've added self-grading Google Forms as well that you can use for the coming school year. So what is a self-grading Google form? So if you go over here, you can see there's a bunch of Google Forms that I've created, and there are Google Forms for each times table. Let's look at the multiplication by 2, multiplying by 2, and you can see that I've added, your student name and all of the questions, and each question has a little star next to it, and we'll talk about what that means in just a moment. So a self-grading Google form is the quiz version of a Google form. So what does that mean? If you go over to the setting function, and you will see there's general presentation quizzes. If you click on quizzes, you just have to turn this and make it into a quiz. After you are able to make it into a quiz, so if you create your own Google form, you can select what you want your students to see. So do you want your students to see the grade right away? Do you want them to see the missed questions, correct answers, point values? I always unchecked correct answers because I allow my students to work on the Google form twice, and if they see the correct answers, then they would just memorize the answers and go back and then just add those correct answers. I only allow them to see the missed questions, so then they can go back and look at the questions that they still need to work on. So that is what you can choose and select. You can also limit the response to just one response. So if you don't want your students to, redo the Google form, you can just click here and limit it to one response. This will require your students to sign into their Google account. You can also collect emails. You can allow them to edit after submitting or see your summary charts, yada yada. So there are a lot of options that you can select to customize this. Now on the Google form itself, you can see that the total points here is 120 points. If you want to keep it at 100, you can delete some of the questions. So each question, I set it to 10 points. So you can also go and adjust the point if you want to, or you can delete 2 of the questions to make it 100 points. You can also go back and add in different correct answers if there are other options you want to add in for your students. You can also add answer feedback. So if your students answer it correctly or incorrect, you can enter a feedback so that they can see that. And to delete a question, so for example, if you think 2 times 1 is too easy for your students, you can also click delete right here, the little trash can symbol. If you don't want to make that question a required question, which means that your students won't be able to submit the Google form unless they have answered this question, and this is where the red star comes from, you can just unselect required, and then you can see that the red star has disappeared, and you can go back, select required. So as you can see, since I deleted one of the questions, now I'm down to 110 points. Let's say we think, 2 times 12 is a little too hard. You can go and click on the little trash can symbol and delete. And if you look at the total points at the top, now we are at 100 points. So it's just up to you. Responses, right now no one has answered or worked on this Google form, so you don't have any responses. I always will suggest that you make a copy of your Google form before you assign it to your students. So you can just click on the 3 dots at the top right-hand corner, make a copy. You can rename it to whatever you want, and then your copy will be made. You can also print out your Google form if you just want your students to do the printable version, or some of your students might not have a digital device, so you can just print that out as well. So when you print it out, this is what it will look like. So it's pretty much like you're printing a quiz for your kids, but you will just have to grade it yourself. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the self-grading format. So now I just moved on to multiplying by 1, and you can see that at the top right hand corner, responses, we have 2 responses. That means that 2 people or 2 of the Google forms have been submitted. To send the Google form, to share the Google form with your students, you just have to click send, and you can share it by email. You can copy the link and share it that way. Again, if you have a blog, a classroom blog, and you want to add it into your blog, you can embed it in the HTML. But the most common way is, sharing the link. If you have a Google Classroom, this would be, you can select it straight from your Google Classroom or click on the link and share it from your Google Classroom. So let's say I have shared it, so copy the link, and then now I'm going to paste the link, enter, and voila, now I am looking at the Google form. So let's do an example one. So this is what your students would see. So let's say we're student A, and I'm just going to do 1, 2, and I'll do some of the questions. I'll answer some of the questions incorrectly, just so you can see what will show up. All right, and then we submit. And here the student has the option to view score. So let's view the score. Well, let's see, at the top I got 100 out of 120, and I can see the 2 questions that I got wrong, but I won't see the answer because remember I unselected the correct answer section. So then I know that if I want to redo this Google form again, I will have to go back and fix these 2 questions. So coming back to this page, if I want to submit another response, then I will click on that, and then I can redo the Google form again. Now on the teacher side, you can come back here and you will see that responses, now we have 3 responses. Before we only had 2. But since I submitted a response just now we have 3. And you can go click on the 3 responses, and you can see a summary. So student name, we got test, student 1, student A, and we can see all the responses. You can also look at each question individually. So that's student name, question, test, student A, student 1. And you can also look at each individual Google Forms. So this is test, student name test, and we can see what test answered. If we go to the next one, we can see what student 1 answered. Or there is an easy way to look at all of the questions and the points. Especially if you are in a classroom of 20 students and more. at the top here, you can just click Create a Spreadsheet. Create. And now a spreadsheet is being created, and you can see everything that all of the Google Forms. So you can see that the timestamp. So Tess answered today, or June 29th at 10:30 a.m. 10:32 a.m. Student 1 answered at 10:36 a.m. Student A answered at 10:51 a.m. So you can actually see the date and time. You can see the score. Now, if you have multiple students answering the Google form, so let me go back here. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to pretend to be student A again. Student A. And I'm just going to do random numbers here. All right, submit it, go back. Now I have 4 responses. You just have to click View Responses in Sheets again. And now you can see there's 2 student A. And what you can do is, if you select the top, click on 1, go to Data, and click Create a Filter. Now you can filter out, let's see, sort from A to B. You can filter out and sort your student names from, in alphabetical order. And you can also see, okay, student A answered the second time, or the first time she answered it. I guess the first time she got 100 out of 120, and then the second time 10 out of 120, and you can decide if you want to give her the higher score or the lower score. So you can also easily do this as well. You can sort from A to Z. This function will make your life so much easier. All right, so that is it for self-grading Google Form. I hope that you have learned something. I hope that this video has been helpful to you, and please comment below if there are any questions that you have, or if you want to share anything that any tips and tricks on Google Forms, because I'm just learning as well. But yeah, happy teaching. Bye-bye.